Welcome to our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining. This one is on the Surrender Essential Oil by Young Living, and I entitled it, Never Surrender, Not This Time. That title would make a whole lot more sense if you actually read my blog on lynnmoralesnd.com. The reason for the title is when I was in my high school years, I loved this band a whole lot that was from Canada, and they had an album called Never Surrender, and then, of course, a title track that went with it. And I used that song a lot in my growing up years when if I felt like something was tough or I was really being challenged by something in life, I found myself singing that song over and over, and, about not giving up. And, one of the things that I've learned so much in my practice in working with clients is that the words you speak are really, really important. And I do now look back on things and think that there are opportunities, absolutely, to move forward in life and to push through. And then there are also opportunities when surrendering to what a different plan might look like or the outcome isn't always a bad idea. And so that's why I question never surrender, because I don't know that never surrendering is always the answer in life. There are opportunities when maybe you want to look at it from a different perspective. So today what we're going to learn about is the surrender oil, and to really get the impact. Part of what my practice is all about is really looking at the emotional roots to disease. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But for today's webinar, it's looking at the emotional signs that may be in your world today that maybe surrendering isn't a bad idea or that surrender is needed. We're going to talk about what is surrender and the actual definition of it, how emotions actually impact your health. And then we'll look at, surrender in a bottle. Well, absolutely, that is what's so neat. You see on the side of the slide here, surrender in a bottle. And then we're going to look at what does surrender look like in your world. So first off, what I think is really important is for you to think about, is there a certain situation in your life that maybe you're going through or have gone through that you are holding on to some negative energy or emotions? And here's just a small example of some emotions or feelings that may be in your life today, and they may be an indication that surrendering to a certain situation or a certain person may not be a bad idea. And so maybe you're not willing to accept a certain situation in life, or maybe you need to ask yourself, who or what are you in resistance toward right now in your life? I found this in my own world where I thought a certain scenario with my elderly parents needed to look a certain way. And actually, the way I visualized life for them was a better view of life. But I also realized that there are certain choices that they made in their lives and that have shaped the course of how their life has turned out. And so I guess I'd ask you to think about this and about if you have some of these emotions or feelings going on, I'd ask you to think about what situation maybe are you trying to control that you can't. Or maybe there's a child in your life that you're trying to control or keep from growing up. Or maybe it's about a door closing in your occupation. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, a couple of those examples going forward as well. I always love to start these presentations off with the definition of the actual word, right? So what is surrender? It's to yield to the power or control or possession of another upon compulsion or demand, or to give up completely or agree to forego, especially in favor of another, or also to give up oneself up into the power of another person, such as in a prisoner situation, or such as some kind of an influence of some sort. So very important to understand what surrendering is. And then I love these surrender thoughts. One of them, if you're a believer in the Bible, Psalm 37:7, surrender yourself to the Lord and wait patiently for Him. This second one really, really spoke to me. Sometimes surrender means giving up trying to understand and becoming comfortable with not knowing. This, I feel like I have definitely lived that, and what you may not realize is that I'm going through some pretty big changes in my world and my occupation, and moving some things, old things out, and bringing in some new things. And so just in the past week, right before I was getting ready to record this class, I had the opportunity to sit back and say, you know what, I need to stop trying to understand XYZ outcome and just get comfortable with the ride ahead. Because regardless, the ride ahead and where I'm going is going to be outstanding. And it's preparing me for great things in the future. So appreciate that quote very much by Eckhart Tolle. And then I like this last one as well, especially since we're talking about essential oils. And if you don't know much about them, that's okay. You're going to learn a whole lot more than most people know in this short webinar. But I love this quote: the plants and flowers I raise about my hut, I now surrender to the will of the wind. And why is that important in an essential oil presentation? Because they come from plants and flowers. So that's the short answer. But I think it's important to understand that my focal point in my practice is to understand how emotions impact disease. And it's very important to understand, break out the word disease, dis-ease, right? And a lack of harmony or disharmony in the body is what disease is. And it can go down to the cellular level. And so what I learned early on in my journey as a health practitioner, that disease is rooted in some main emotions, like fear, anger, sorrow, things like that, and then it branches off into more specifics like resentments, bitterness, sadness, and so it's important to note that every disease has an emotional tie to it. There's something that triggered the disharmony in the cells, the disharmony in an organ or body part or an endocrine gland, and so it's important to understand that in order to bring harmony to the cells, let's think about it. I mean, this is really simple, right? Ask yourself, when somebody does something nice for you, how does that make you feel? Harmonic, right? Harmony, right? Or if someone gives you flowers or a card or chocolates, and that generally makes people feel cared for. And when someone pays you a compliment with words, right? Those are all signs. Those are all things. Ask yourself, think about the last time that happened in your life. Didn't you feel good when someone praised you or said something good or gave you something? So positive emotions are going to raise disharmony to harmony. And I'm going to share with you very basics, very, very basics in science, but on a level that everybody should be able to get, right? First off, it's important to know Albert Einstein. And he said everything has vibrations. Everything. The conference call telephone I'm using right now has a vibration. Essential oils have a vibration. Milk has a vibration. Everything has a vibration. And vibrations are frequencies. So your body has energy frequencies. Now, energy runs through it. So how do you know that? Well, in the wintertime, you walk across the carpet and you shock your pet, or you shock your spouse or a family member. There's an energy exchange. It's another reason why lightning likes people, right? We have energy running through our body. So picture an EKG machine. Literally, you can see the heartbeat on the monitor and watch those energy waves. So doctors can actually, they're trained to see disharmony in that heartbeat, right? And so every cell in your body has a similar balancing frequency. So what I want to do now is explore with you about how disharmony can be created by a lack of surrendering when it's appropriate, a lack of being able to give up control by being able to give up, not being married to the outcome in a certain situation. So first off, let's talk about raising your frequency. How can you raise the harmony in your cells through the concept of surrendering? We already talked about how disharmony in a cell can change to harmony through actions, someone doing something nice for you, words, someone paying you a compliment, or if someone says something mean, right? How does that make you feel, right? That can make you feel pretty low. Someone, said something not very nice. Again, so you can see the disharmony versus the harmony effect. Supplements all have a frequency, like Einstein talked about. So if you have a deficiency in a certain vitamin, the antithesis of that would be the vitamin's frequency, so giving you that vitamin. By the way, not all vitamins or supplements are created equal, just so you know. So they don't all work for everyone. Brand X may work great for you, but it might not work very well for your neighbor. Everyone's frequencies are created by the world around them and their exposure in life. Also, smells and sounds can raise your frequency. So I talked about that song at the beginning of the presentation, right? That song put me on an emotional high, a happy, go-get-'em tiger kind of feeling. And so, sounds or songs can do that in your life. They will do that in your life, right? How many of you have heard a song that brought back memories of childhood or your first love, right? Well, it could also bring you down, right, those sounds. And now let's talk about smells. How many of you have had an experience where you smelled something cooking and you went, oh my gosh, that reminds me of, or that reminds me when Grandma made my favorite cookies, right? So all of these are examples of how that disharmony can be raised to a harmonic level and at the cellular level. So it boils down to whatever raises the positive frequencies, and one way to do that is through essential oils. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those and how that looks. So this particular oil, the short answer on this oil and what it's about is to basically, surrender aggression and any kind of a controlling attitude. Again, don't be married to the outcome. Surrender to a situation, and maybe the outcome will take care of itself. How many of you who are maybe a little bit older have figured out in life that, you know what, that's a small situation in my life, and it may just resolve itself by Tuesday if I just sit back and see what happens. So anyway, so the aroma helps to cast off inhibitions that might be limiting one's potential. Before we go any further on break down this oil and why it is so powerful for a healing perspective, a wellness perspective, we better first talk about what an essential oil is. So first off, I mentioned that quote earlier, you bet. They come from all kinds of nature-type opportunities, shrubs, trees, seeds, etc. They're extracted from plant sources using steam distillation. That's important. This particular brand of oils is very, very particular about how they get their oils out of these plants. They're also incredibly concentrated and really powerful. But how do oils work exactly? All right, well, I'm going to get a little more scientific on you this time. So basically, there's components called aldehydes and esters, and they help both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. So those are the repair system and the fight or flight system. And they allow the body to relax instead of letting anxiety build up. So anxiety actually creates acid in the body, not a good thing. And it activates this transcript enzyme, which transcribes the anxiety onto the RNA template. Is your life science biology coming back to you now? And stores it in the DNA. Now that's epigenetics, and that's a topic for another blog. Check out my website. It's already out there for you, and can learn a lot from that as well. But when we're exposed to an emotionally charged situation, it's important to diffuse this oil. It will absorb into the bloodstream through the nasal cavity to the limbic system, and that's where your emotions are stored. That will activate a part of the brain called the amygdala. And that's where fear, rage, and trauma are stored. And the oils sedate the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system to help raise that frequency. See how easy it is? So now let's talk about, why is the surrender oil so powerful? Okay, remember in the beginning we talked about there were some emotions you might be feeling around a certain situation that maybe you need to stop controlling or start surrendering to. Well, you got to think of that memory right now, or that person that you need to surrender to. For your own health, don't let that person or situation have power over you. Trust me, it's not a good place to be in life. So what I want you to do is think about that situation, and now as I go through the oils that create the surrender blend, I'm going to break it down for you. And it's going to be very obvious to you at the end of this webinar why you might want the surrender oil to support you. So there's 7 oils that create this blend oil called surrender. Now, I have another presentation. It's basically a Essential Oils 101 class. You can find information about it on my website. And that's where you'll learn about some of these differences between single oils and blend oils. But let's get started first. There's 7 oils for this surrender blend, and the first one is lavender. So again, think of the situation you're dealing with that you need to stop controlling, or the person you need to stop controlling, and understand that this particular oil of lavender helps to calm the mind and the body. So it helps with feelings of abandonment, and it helps with feelings of criticism. How many of you have felt some of those things around the situation you need to surrender towards? That's why lavender is so powerful in this blend. And how about lemon, which is a great pick-me-up oil. It promotes energy and mental clarity, right, to help you think through this problem better or differently. And it helps with emptiness and frustration or sadness feelings, or feeling like you're stuck. And what's interesting about this one is that from an emotional standpoint, it can help support the body when there's anger involved, or when daydreaming, or despair, or sadness, guilt, or mood swings. How many of those emotions might you be feeling towards your situation you need to surrender to? And how about Roman chamomile? This one supports the muscular system and helps promote calming and relaxation. It's great for combating stress and sleeplessness. Now, if you got a situation that you're angry about or trying to control, wouldn't it be nice to have an oil that can kind of support your muscular system from being tense? Wouldn't that be great? You ever, got that feeling like, oh, I got this pain in the neck, and it's called Sally. Oops, I didn't mean to say that, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what I'm saying? There's people in your life or situations that feel like a pain in the neck. Well, this would be a great way to support those muscles in the neck. The emotions that Roman chamomile helps support are the feelings of being petrified, unwelcome, minimizing irritability and nervousness, and helping to dispel anger and stabilizing emotions. Now, how might that help you in whatever situation you feel you need to surrender to? Now, the last 4 oils in our incredible surrender blend. First is spruce, and it releases emotional blocks and brings about a feeling of balance and grounding. It helps with the emotions of confusion, despair, disappointment, discouragement, fear, frustration, guilt, mood swings, panic, restlessness. Wow, like Spruce does everything. So how might those emotions be coming up in your life around whatever you need to surrender to? How about Angelica? This is basically the oil of the angels. It's used to purify the air in other countries over in Europe and promotes feelings of protection and security, guarding you against negative energy. It helps with the emotions of resolution, bringing about resolution, shame, sympathy, or weakness. And what situation in your life do these kind of emotions surface around that you might benefit from using the surrender oil, surrendering or giving up control, maybe to an addiction or something like that? How about German chamomile? It's got a calming aroma and helps with peace and patience. It also helps with the emotions of anger, dealing with past emotions and dealing with, allowing for a stable environment. Or how about mountain savory? It helps with energizing and motivating. So again, in your situation that you need to surrender to, how might these oils in this blend support you through that process, raising your frequency so that you can see it through different eyes, that you can see it more clearly, not out of fear, not out of anger, but looking at it through a different set of lenses. So here's what's important now is to understand the general application for this oil. First off, it's great to diffuse it. If you don't know what a diffuser is, you can watch my Young Living Essential Oil 101 class and learn more about the oils and how to diffuse the oils. And the other way is to directly inhale it, or you can add some drops to water, your bath water. And then also there's applications that you can do possibly to, the forehead, solar plexus, the chest, different places like that, where you can actually use it as a full body massage. Maybe your whole body needs to surrender to something, right? So dilute it 1 to 15, 1 drop of the surrender oil to 15 of the vegetable oil. Or you can put some drops on a cotton ball or tissue and put it in air vents if you don't have a diffuser. And a couple of special points to consider: the nervous system, the spinal cord, right, or the brain are some important points to consider as you're moving forward with using the surrender oil. Now, I like to point out these particular points on the ear. This is what we refer to as auricular therapy. Picture that there are points all over this ear. It's like acupuncture points, and or acupressure, I should say. And because there are many, and if you watched any of my other presentations, you'll see different points are highlighted. These particular points are specifically highlighted for this oil today. And what you do is I take a little Q-tip, those little applicator Q-tips. They're like have a pointy end on them. They're good for like eye makeup. And what I do is I just stick the tip of that applicator in the end of that essential oil bottle, and then I press around these spots right there. And if it's sore, you're generally on the right spot. And that's how what I do is just apply that oil right to that location and actually apply a little bit of pressure when I do it. So how do you apply this to your world? Well, what you want to do first is it's important that you get quiet and you become aware of your body and your emotions. Now, this isn't as easy to do for a lot of people as I wish it were. And I want you to ask yourself these questions. You should have been thinking about this the whole presentation anyway, right? But what topic requires your surrender? Or who do I need to surrender to? What body part do I need to focus on? So people say, how do I know that? Well, easy. Consider if you're having a body part that's giving you trouble. If your doctor says, hey, your liver's enzymes are out of range. There's a body part to think about, right? Or maybe it's one of the body parts that aligns with what I talked about on the previous slide. So a couple of things to think of there. The other thing I would encourage you to do when you use this oil in your world is use an affirmation. Remember, positive words, positive frequencies. So I came up with one for you. I now let go of worn-out conditions and worn-out things. Divine order is established in my mind, body, and affairs. Behold, I make all things new. So let go of the thing you're trying to control, or the person you're trying to control, or the situation you're trying to control, right? What do they say? If you let something, set it free, right? Let go and open up to a new outcome, a new possibility. So I'm going to ask you to do the following. Raise your awareness and notice. So I have on my website, I have a blog on awareness, and it's called Awaken the Sleeping Giant Within. It's a very good, there's a very good paragraph in there that gives you all kinds of things to think about that might change in your world as you start to use these oils for this situation you're trying to surrender to. And it just gives you the things to think about. The other thing I want you to do is, so consider applying the surrender oil on the body part or the ear chart that I just showed you. So again, remember I said to you a little while ago, what if your liver enzymes are out of whack, or what if your left big toe is hurting, right? Well, maybe that's the body part that's kind of crying out to you saying, this is where I stored the problem. This is where I stored the anger or the fear or the whatever related to needing to surrender. That's the body part that I would recommend you focus on. Or use the general application ones. Now, this may take a couple of applications for days or weeks, and I would recommend that you drop a drop of the surrender oil also in your hand, your left hand, rub clockwise 3 times with your right hand over that palm, and inhale and say that affirmation that I just went over a little while back. Very powerful. Gets that up into the nose, up the nasal cavity, into the limbic brain. Powerful. And then what I want you to do is also look for a change in that physical body part or your emotional well-being toward the people that you needed to surrender to or the topic that you needed to surrender to. So think about that. I found when I work with the oils that sometimes the deeper problem I'm working on, I might not see an impact or change for a few days or even a couple weeks. But along the way, I start to notice I have a different heart or a different way of communicating with other people along the way. I start to see a change in how I'm interacting with other people. People that maybe were not the original topic of the surrender process, but I start to see how I'm evolving as my frequency starts to change. So I'm going to let you in on a secret. Not all people are created exactly the same. And maybe you've noticed this. So it's important for you to understand that I am a huge, huge advocate for helping people address their health uniquely. Even identical twins have a different setup, a different makeup in life. Maybe mom was a little nicer to one than the other. Maybe someone had a bad experience on the playground at school. Maybe someone had a car accident. Your worlds are different. And to think that you can all fit in the same experience is, or that you're not unique, would be a very big error in judgment around this process. So I encourage you to customize your surrender experience. So let me tell you what that looks like. First, you want to order your surrender oil. If you do not have your surrender oil, it's going to be hard for you to go through this process, right? So here's how you do that. You get in touch with the person that invited you to this webinar. And they should be able to help you get that oil. If they aren't, then you can reach out to me at my website, search on the word surrender, and there'll be an opportunity for you to order the oil there, or you can reach out to me directly, and we can talk through different options for you to get oils going forward. And then I would ask you to consider if you would like to do a customized consult. These are powerful. I'm talking very fast results in a very short period of time. And here's how that looks. First, you'd reach out to me on my website, and the session includes the following. You get identification, and I mean specific identification, of the topic of interest that requires your surrender. So maybe you're not exactly sure that, you need to surrender to something, but you're not exactly sure the preciseness of it. Maybe it was something that happened 3 years ago in the month of February on the 4th, right? That's the kind of preciseness I'm talking about. Oh, yeah, there were 5 experiences of you feeling controlled or where you needed to control something, but number 3, that's the triggering event. That's important because that helps you get through this faster. Then the other thing we're going to go through in a customized session is exactly the location for you to apply the surrender oil. It may include an organ, endocrine, or body part. It might include some of those auricular therapy points that we showed you on the prior slide. It might be different auricular therapy points than we showed on the prior slide because you're unique. I'm not going to ever assume I should fit you in a bottle, fit you in a box with everybody else. Then what I'm going to do is go through the recommended application amount, unique to you, and the dilution ratio. Maybe you only need 2 drops every morning for a week. Other people might need 4 drops twice a day for a month. Wouldn't you like to know that in advance? The next thing is sensory identification. Have you ever thought about it? If you didn't have your 5 senses, life would be pretty boring. Think about it. If you couldn't hear, if you couldn't see, if you couldn't smell, taste, or touch, why live, right? What would be the point? So sensory identification, sometimes our senses cut out. You ever know anyone who lost a certain sense of taste, certain parts, sweetness or sour or something? Maybe someone who's lost hearing in one of their ears. These all may have been impacted by an emotional situation, by a situation you're trying to control, and now suddenly we need to address that sensory application. This session will tie that sense into the session, figure out exactly which one, whether it's natural or subtle sense, and work through it. And then the personal affirmation that resonates with you. Remember I gave you an affirmation a little while back, positive words to say while you breathed in that oil? Well, what if that affirmation is not the right one for you? What if we need to actually insert a person's name? We might. So the point is, this is going to be a personal affirmation unique to you so that it literally resonates with you from the very beginning. So that is the end of our presentation today, and each person's journey is very different, and so I encourage you to share this with other people that that maybe having some struggles in their life, and maybe this would benefit them as they go through their surrender experience. I want to thank you so much for being part of this webinar today, and I encourage you to check out my emotional and feeling series. I have a number of classes out there now, and would love for you to have the opportunity to, and welcome you to go check out any one of them that you want. So thank you again. I appreciate you being a part of this webinar today and making it such a great success.